Hi, welcome to Executive Points of View. I'm Joe Markey, and I'm here with my co-creator Grant Shee to talk a little bit about organizational consumption and wake. These are topics that are generally not discussed within corporate America, except as a part of post-merger integration or something of the sort. I think you have some thoughts on it, Grant, and I'd like for us to have a good discussion around that. So I'll hand it over to you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. So yes, this concept around consumption and wake is really centered around this thought that an organization is much like a living organism. And if we can accept that and think of it in those terms, then as you know, living organisms must consume to grow and stay alive and to move forward. And they produce waste and they produce wake or a pollution path. And so I think if we look at companies, organizations, what have you, oftentimes these types of things get uncovered during mergers and acquisitions activities. But even short of that, every organization has a natural rate of consumption and a natural ability to consume. Now, this consumption is either in terms of sales of their product or service, or their ability to accept and adopt change within the organization. So the number of initiatives that can happen in a year, in a quarter, in a week, right? How nimble, we often measure in nimbleness and how companies can adapt. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with the company size. You know, the more people you have, the longer it takes to do change management and get everyone on board with the concept. Smaller organizations can do it more swiftly.
But all these things are just part of consumption, just as a part of going around doing your business saying, I'm going through my budget cycle. What are we going to get done this year?
Yeah.
If you push it too far beyond that, what you're saying is there are consequences around that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, everyone always says, oh, if I only had more people, if I only had more dollars. But what we don't often say is, what is my ability to consume those dollars and people? Because they're going to have an output, they're going to have their own wake that they produce. And so as an organization, what is the amount of change, of consumption that you can handle at one time before that organization starts to burst? And you see it. You know, we often talk about concepts like shadow IT, and it's because certain IT organizations get to the point where there's too much consumption, change, or burden placed on either them or by them, and people start saying, you know what, I can't put food in the stomach anymore. Let me hollow out a leg and see if I can shove some pork chops in there, right? So I think it's important to understand. And again, this is something that's defined differently for every organization. But I think as leaders of an organization, if you can get to that fact quicker, if you can acknowledge that and start to understand and think in those terms, I think you'll be better off.
So from a consulting perspective, I would say when you have a project ongoing, to an extent, it's around burn efficiency. You know, you might have a lot of people, but what do you have them doing at that particular point in time? Are you going to be efficient at building things? And if you're a corporation, it might be around building a particular type of capability that you need to build within the enterprise to keep that. How efficiently can you create that capability within the enterprise?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think so many times that is the focal point. What can we produce? What can we output? But we have to understand this concept of it's not just the output, but consuming it. You know, if you look at technology today, we have more menu items available for sale, for consumption, but our stomachs in the organizations really haven't grown.
They haven't grown.
Right? The ability for individuals and teams and companies to absorb those changes, absorb the nutrients of food, if you will, absorb all the different spices and varieties of menu offerings that are out there today. I'm not sure that's changed that much. And so when you have more things to choose from that are all in their own state of minds, good, valuable, good things to have, right? All positive returns, but your consumption is still fixed or not able to grow and expand, then I think you have a problem of bursting at the seams.
Right. So then I think I would like to focus a little bit on this other concept of wake, because, you know, I always see it as, you know, what's the maximum speed the organization can move on and consume resources. Now, from a sailing perspective, that's the way I think of it. You know, longer ships can move faster than shorter ones. And so depending on how your organization is structured, some organizations are equipped to move faster than others, and others are not. So talk to me about this wake thing and, you know, these waste byproducts that we produce sometimes.
Yeah, wake is just our clean way of saying what is the pollution or the ramifications of actions and decisions that either you make or your organization makes. And I think for a lot of organizations, teams, people, using the sailing analogy, right? A boat can cut through the water to its destination super fast, super efficiently. Everyone's applauding how it's making great speed and time. But I think if you turn around and look, what's the wake that it causes, right? What are the ripple effects in the water that it leaves behind? What's the pollution?
What are
What's
the
the
ramifications?
byproduct?
What's
the
the
ramification?
disruption? What's the disruption within
That's
the
correct.
enterprise?
It's not just literally, this is not an environmental topic, but there are decisions made that have repercussions, real repercussions for a lot of people and teams and organizations to have to deal with. And I think the leadership teams in the organizations that can recognize that sooner and address it head on and say, either we know these are the disruptions and ramifications, the wake that our decisions and our mission causes, versus being ignorant to it and leaving a wake trail for others to have to swim through. So
That's very, and I would like to ask you a little bit, or probe a little bit into that, because so many of us are very fact-driven and we are very data and analytics-driven, that we sometimes forget the emotional impacts to the workforces that we have. And because I have been in organizations where they still remember massive change from 10, 15 years before. And so I think it's important that we keep in mind that wake isn't necessarily just a change that happens in space and time, but it's also an emotional thing that could happen with workforces.
yeah, that's a great point. What you're alluding to are so many environments you walk into and you hear people say, oh, that ERP disaster from 10 years ago, the CRM failures that we had, the marketing campaign that went nowhere.
We tried that before and
That's
it didn't
right.
work. We tried
That's
it 3
right.
times and we haven't been able
These
to.
are the war stories, the battle scars that we often use analogies around. But that's exactly it. It's the wake caused by those decisions and those activities, and people have to live with them.
Yes, really, those are really interesting, deep topics that we really don't think about much in corporate America. But as executives, we really should be mindful about some of these things because they do have long-term impacts into our organization.
Yeah.
And how we make change happen within an organization, the speed of change, and the repercussions for that change as
That's
well.
right.
So, Grant, I do want to shift gears a little bit. I know that you do quite a bit of work with women in technology. It Girls, I think, is you're on that foundation, and it helps young women move into or reach their full potential within via education. So can you talk a little bit about It Girls? I think it's a wonderful program, a wonderful foundation. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. As obviously both of us are father to wonderful daughters, and so I think this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart in terms of enabling young women in their pursuit of STEM education and potentially careers. So the It Girls Foundation is something that I founded about 6 years ago now, and it's a group that's designed to really bring a real-life look at STEM and the challenges that young women and women face in these fields, and giving these elementary school age kids an opportunity to understand various STEM topics, but doing so in a real life environment and kind of a no holds barred approach to it, right? We're very upfront about what types of challenges they're going to face, discrimination, the way the world is right now in a male dominated
We're still there. It's
STEM
amazing.
society.
It's 2021, but we are still
That's right.
we're still locked
That's right.
into some of those things.
Yeah, and the mission of It Girls is I hope that in 30 years that type of organization doesn't need to exist.
That would be great.
Yeah, I hope it's just STEM education for all, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that there is a gap right now in terms of gender and in terms of female representation in not only IT but overall STEM careers and fields.
I certainly see it in certain workforces that I interview for. It is very difficult to find women candidates in certain engineering fields or certain science and technology fields. So
Yep.
it would be good if we could proactively. It's really good that you're making that or helping to make that proactive change, so that we can move towards a more egalitarian and equal society.
No, I appreciate those comments, Joe, and I think getting back to our topic around consumption and wake, this phenomenon that we're seeing with women in technical or STEM fields is most likely the wake
Right.
that was caused by some sort of lack of consumption or ability to consume these factors in our world a long time ago.
That's a really great observation. Well, thank you so much, Grant, for being here, for sharing information with us, and these are wonderful points, and thank you for your work with It Girls. So that's it for this episode of Executive Points of View. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.